I never planned to meet anyone that night. I wasn't even supposed to be at that wedding in downtown Chicago, just a last-minute guest sitting alone at table 9, trying to survive dry chicken and strangers' laughter. But then he sat beside me. Michael. Sharp suit, disarming smile, the kind of man who made silence feel electric. I told myself it was just a conversation. I was wrong. That night would rewrite everything I thought I knew about love, timing, and second chances. I was 31, single, and accidentally attending a wedding I had no emotional investment in. My roommate had begged me to be her +1, only to vanish with the best man 10 minutes into the reception. So there I was, marooned at table 9, invisible between sequined dresses and polished laughter. The air smelled like champagne and roses, and I felt like an intruder in someone else's fairy tale. When I reached for the breadbasket, a deep voice cut through the noise. "Is this seat taken?" I looked up, and there he was, tall, confident, the kind of presence that made the room feel smaller. "Not anymore," I said, trying to sound casual. He smiled, sat down, and introduced himself. Michael. His handshake was firm but easy, like he wasn't trying to prove anything. We started talking, small things first. He was the groom's college friend, a successful entrepreneur avoiding a clingy aunt. I laughed more than I had in weeks. There was something grounding about him, something unpolished beneath the perfect suit. He wasn't flirting, not really. He was curious. And for the first time that night, someone looked at me and actually saw me. When the DJ called for the bouquet toss, I groaned and he leaned closer, whispering, "Want to escape?" I hesitated only a second before following him out onto the terrace. The Chicago night was cold but alive. City lights reflecting on the river, music fading behind us. "I thought you looked sad," he said softly. "I wasn't sad," I replied. "Just tired of pretending everything's fine." He nodded like he understood. Then, quieter, "You don't strike me as someone who hides." I smiled. "You don't know me." "Not yet," he said. And somehow, that sounded like a promise. By the time the wedding ended, the night had turned sharp with wind. I was outside, fighting with my rideshare app when headlights stopped beside me. Michael's voice came through the drizzle. "You're not walking home in those heels, are you?" I wanted to resist, to protect my independence. But something in his tone wasn't controlling. It was concerned, warm. "Depends," I said. "Are you offering a ride or just judging my life choices?" He grinned, opening the passenger door. "Both." His car smelled faintly of leather and rain. We drove through the city in near silence, streetlights flashing across his face. I asked what he did. He paused before answering, "I run a few companies. Tech, logistics, boring stuff." I teased him. "You sound like you're reciting a grocery list." He laughed. "Experience taught me people treat you differently once they know too much." When he dropped me off in front of my small apartment above a bakery, he didn't rush to leave. "This is you?" he asked, glancing up. "Yeah. Last floor. Smells like cinnamon every morning." "That sounds like home." There was a pause, one of those moments that feels like a question without words. "Thanks for the ride," I said, reaching for the handle. "Sarah," he said, stopping me. "I have a dinner tomorrow. It's painfully formal. Come with me. I promise real food and zero dry chicken." I almost said no. We barely knew each other. But there was something about him, an honesty that didn't ask for belief, just time. "All right," I said finally. "But if it's awful, you owe me cinnamon rolls." He smiled like he'd just won something quietly important. "Deal." When I climbed the stairs to my apartment, my heart was still racing. I'd spent years building walls, and somehow, in a single evening, a stranger in a suit had found the door. The next morning, sunlight spilled through my blinds, and for a second, I thought I'd dreamed it all. The terrace, the conversation, the promise of cinnamon rolls. Then I saw it, a white garment bag hanging on my door handle, with a pale envelope tucked underneath. Inside, a handwritten note, "For the woman who didn't pretend to be anyone else last night, Michael." My pulse quickened. It wasn't just the gesture, it was the thought behind it. The dress inside was deep indigo, simple but elegant. The kind of thing that made you stand taller without trying. I told myself it was ridiculous to feel nervous. It was just dinner. Except people like Michael didn't live in just situations. By 7, a car arrived, sleek, silent, too polished for my neighborhood. The driver introduced himself as Marcus and handed me a small box. Inside, a delicate rose gold pendant shimmered softly. I almost didn't wear it, but curiosity won. When we reached the venue, a glass-walled rooftop overlooking the Chicago River, I understood what formal really meant. Crystal chandeliers, designer suits, laughter wrapped in money. Michael was waiting near the entrance, dressed in navy, looking unfairly composed. His eyes found me instantly, and something in his expression shifted. "You look like trouble," he said, offering his arm. Inside, he guided me through conversations that felt both rehearsed and hollow. Donors, investors, people who spoke in coded smiles. He never left my side. Every time I felt out of place, his hand found the small of my back, subtle, grounding. On the terrace later, I asked, "Why me? Why bring someone you just met?" He looked out over the skyline before answering. "Because I didn't want to face this world with someone pretending to enjoy it. I wanted real." His honesty hit harder than champagne. I didn't know what this was becoming, but for the first time in years, I wasn't afraid to find out. 5 days. That's how long it took for the silence to start feeling heavier than the night I met him. No calls. No texts. No more surprises hanging from my door. I told myself it was fine. People like Michael lived in motion, not routine. Still, I couldn't stop replaying that rooftop, the way his voice softened when he said my name. I buried myself in work at the small music studio where I taught part-time. Teaching kids to love sound had always grounded me. But every time the bakery downstairs released the scent of cinnamon and sugar, I thought of his promise. It was raining the evening he came back. The city shimmered under streetlights when I heard my phone vibrate, an unknown number. "Sarah, don't hang up," his voice said, breathless. "I'm outside." Through the fogged window, I saw the same black SUV parked by the curb. He stepped out, rain clinging to his hair, no suit this time, just jeans, a gray sweater, and eyes that looked both tired and alive. "I had to fly to Zurich," he said quickly. "Last-minute crisis. I should have called, but I didn't have your number. I tried to find you." I wanted to be angry, to tell him 5 days of silence isn't how you build anything real. But then he said it, quietly, like a confession. "You weren't just someone I met at a wedding, Sarah. You were the one thing that made everything else stop feeling so transactional." We stood there, rain whispering between us, the world narrowed to breath and heartbeat. "I don't need promises," I said finally. "Just consistency." He nodded, stepping closer. "Then let me prove it." I should have stepped back. Instead, I let him in. And for the first time in a long while, the silence didn't hurt anymore, it healed. A week later, he showed up at the cafe next to my studio with 2 cappuccinos and a folded piece of paper. He looked nervous, something I hadn't seen in him before. "Before you panic," he said, sliding the paper toward me, "just read." It was a proposal, not the romantic kind, at least not yet. Michael's sister was launching a new arts foundation in Paris, focusing on underprivileged kids and music education. "They need someone to build the program," he said. "Someone who believes in art the way you do." I stared at him. "Paris? You want me to move across the ocean?" He leaned forward. "Not for me. For you. For something that matters. But I'd like to go with you." His voice trembled slightly, as if afraid I'd laugh. "I've built 100 companies, Sarah, but nothing that ever felt alive. You make things feel alive." The cafe noise faded. For a second, it was just the 2 of us, 2 people trying to believe in timing that had never worked before. "You disappeared once," I said. "How do I know you won't do it again?" He didn't flinch. "Because this time, I don't want to escape anything. I want to build something real." Something inside me shifted, the same flutter that began the night he sat beside me at that wedding table. Only now it wasn't curiosity. It was choice. "All right," I whispered. "But if I go, it's for the music. not the man. He smiled, but his eyes said he understood both truths. Then let's start there. 2 months later, I was staring out a window overlooking the Seine, coffee in hand, still wondering how a lonely night in Chicago had turned into a life halfway across the world. Paris had a rhythm of its own, the hum of bicycles, the chatter of cafes, the endless echo of dreams older than either of us. I directed the new music program from an old conservatory near Montmartre. The children's laughter filled the hallways every morning, their clumsy piano scales mixing with the scent of chalk and rain. Michael divided his time between board meetings and helping me design the curriculum. I teased him about his terrible French, he teased me about my perfectionism. But beneath it all, something steady grew, not a fantasy, but the calm pulse of a shared life. One evening, after a long day of rehearsals, I walked into our apartment to find him cooking, or trying to. Burned toast, overconfident grin. "Master chef," he said, waving a spatula. I laughed until I cried. "You know we live above a bakery, right?" He shrugged. "They don't look at you the way I do when I burn things." That line stayed with me. Because in that tiny, messy kitchen, I realized love wasn't in grand gestures or perfect timing. It was in the laughter over failed breakfasts, the silence between flights, the small things we built when no one was watching. Months passed. The kids in my program prepared for their first big performance. The night before, Michael looked at me across the dinner table and said, "You haven't sat alone at a table since we met." I smiled, my throat tight. I guess I learned there's a difference between being alone and being at peace. He reached across the table, his hand finding mine. And maybe peace is what happens when you finally stop pretending you don't deserve the good things. Outside, Paris glittered, and for the first time, I believed him. The night of the concert arrived like a heartbeat I could feel in my chest. The hall near the Champs-Élysées shimmered under golden light, filled with donors, diplomats, and wide-eyed children gripping their instruments. I should have been calm, but my hands trembled, not from fear but from awe. These kids, these melodies. They were the proof that starting over had been worth it. Michael appeared backstage, immaculate in a dark suit, his tie slightly undone. "They're ready," he whispered. I nodded, blinking back tears as the first notes echoed through the hall. The sound grew, fragile at first, then strong, steady, alive. When the final chord faded, the applause felt endless. I slipped out a side door, overwhelmed, needing air. Moments later, I heard his footsteps behind me. He was holding a small box. "Don't panic," he said softly, opening it to reveal a simple rose gold ring with a single sapphire. "I'm not asking for perfect. I'm asking for every morning, every mistake, every laugh we haven't had yet." My throat tightened. "Michael." He took my hand. "Let's stop calling it luck, Sarah. Let's call it home." And when he slid the ring onto my finger, the city lights blurred into something infinite. A year later, I sat on our Paris balcony, morning sunlight dancing across the Seine. Michael was in the kitchen, humming off-key, determined to perfect his version of French toast. I could still smell cinnamon, the scent that had followed me from that wedding night in Chicago. We'd built a life from small moments, late-night laughter, burnt breakfasts, music echoing through cobblestone streets. It wasn't perfect, it was real. And that made it beautiful. As he stepped outside with 2 steaming plates, he grinned. "See? Not burned this time." I laughed, setting down my coffee. "Miracles happen." He leaned down, kissed my forehead, and said quietly, "No. We happen." And just like that, I realized, I'd never sit at an empty table again. Speech balloon, tell us in the comments. Do you believe people can truly change for love? Headphones, subscribe for more emotional stories about love, betrayal, and redemption that touch the heart and twist the soul. Fire, turn on notifications so you don't miss the next story that will break your heart and heal it.